Hey guys, what's up? How's it going? A brand new season of Street Fighter 6 is about to begin, and unlike the so-called leaked DLC list that had been making the rounds, this new season is entirely composed of new characters. Well, with the exception of World Tour veteran Bosch and the guest appearance of Final Fantasy's Tifa Lockhart. And among the newcomers, the first to arrive this August is someone who's about to make history, Yasmin, the franchise's first ever Filipino character. Yasmin might be Street Fighter's first Filipino character, but she's certainly not the first one in fighting games. So what do you say we take a look not only at her, but also at other representatives of this rich culture? We'll go over everything we know so far about Yasmin, her design, her lore, or at least what we know before release, and the gameplay philosophy behind her. Then, just as promised, we'll meet some of the other fighting game characters representing this rich nation. Sounds good? Let's get the ball rolling. Oh, and before we start, let me ask you forgiveness in advance if I mispronounce anything. Tagalog is completely new to me, so bear with me. Anyways, what exactly is Yasmin all about? Capcom clearly wanted her Filipino heritage to be front and center. Her design draws inspiration from the Philippine eagle, from her hairstyle to the details of her karambit, while even her belt features both Latin lettering and the traditional Bayani script. One interesting thing about Yasmin is her personality. Outside of battle, Yasmin is shy, quiet, and socially awkward, often struggling with self-confidence. After her older brother left to study at a university, she lost all confidence in herself, withdrew from the world, and even stopped going to school. It wasn't until she came across a video from fellow Street Fighter Manon that she found the inspiration to start moving forward again. But once she ties back her hair before a fight, it's like flipping a switch. She becomes energetic, confident, and fearless, almost like she's stepping into a completely different mindset. It's a fun visual way of showing her overcoming her own anxiety every time she enters the ring. Rather than representing a single martial art, Capcom combined three Filipino disciplines: Eskrima, also known as Arnis, which focuses heavily on weapon combat, Silat, and Yaw-Yan, a striking art often nicknamed Dance of Death. The result is a fast, acrobatic character built around a karambit knife, rapid kicks, and wind-based techniques that let her extend attacks and throw projectiles across the screen. Even her special moves stay true to her roots, with all of them carrying Tagalog names instead of the usual Japanese or English terminology we've grown used to throughout the series. Overall, I think Capcom did a really nice job introducing Yasmin. She brings a fighting style we've never seen before in Street Fighter, a personality that immediately stands out from the rest of the cast, and another culture that's now represented in one of gaming's biggest fighting game franchises. But as I mentioned earlier, she is far from being the first Filipino fighter in gaming. So let's take a look at some of the other characters who got there first. So who's next? Jose Rizal? Talim? Actually, no. I've already covered both of them in another video. Instead, what if I told you there's an entire fighting game built around Philippine history? That's right. Our next air quotes character is actually almost the entire roster of Bayani fighting game, a Filipino indie game developed by Renita Games and inspired by heroes and historical figures from the Philippines. Bayani features 8 playable warriors, but 7 of them are the ones we'll be meeting today. The only one we'll be skipping is Fernando, who's based on the Portuguese explorer Ferdinand Magellan rather than a Filipino historical figure. Let's start with the game's main protagonist, Joe. Joe is inspired by Jose Rizal, the Philippines' national hero and one of the most influential figures in the country's history. Rizal wasn't a military leader, he was a writer, intellectual, and reformist whose novels Noli Mi Tangere and El Filibusterismo exposed the abuses of Spanish colonial rule. His writings helped inspire the Philippine Revolution, and he was eventually executed in 1896. Fun fact, despite being remembered primarily as an author, he was also skilled in fencing. Bayani takes that historical figure and gives him a fictional twist. In the game's story, Joe returns home after studying abroad, only to find the Philippines threatened by the invading forces of Fernando. Faced with a growing crisis, he struggles between two paths. Should he continue fighting with his words, or is it finally time to fight with his fists? That internal conflict even manifests itself as a split personality, becoming one of the defining traits of this character. Joe functions as the game's Shoto clone, similar to Ryu in Street Fighter, making him the ideal character for learning the fundamentals of Bayani. His gameplay focuses on zoning, footsies, and punishing opponents who make mistakes. Next up is Rey, inspired by Andrés Bonifacio, one of the key leaders of the Philippine Revolution. Often called the Supremo and even the father of the revolution, Bonifacio co-founded the Katipunan, the secret society that led the uprising against Spanish colonial rule. He was eventually executed in 1897. Bayani puts a supernatural spin on that story. After Drey and his brother are executed, Oria and Lulang Sora use the forbidden art of alchemy to bring him back to life, reconstructing his body with the remains of his brother. Consumed by the anger and seeking revenge against those responsible for his death, Drey escapes and begins his hunt for the people who betrayed him. Drey is the game's primary rushdown character. His gameplay is defined by high speed, aggression, and ninja-like mobility. He is designed to overwhelm opponents with constant pressure and fast combo strings. Our next fighter is Rio, inspired by Apolinario Mabini, one of the greatest minds behind the Philippine Revolution. Often referred to as the brains of the revolution and the sublime paralytic, Mabini became one of the country's most influential political thinkers despite being left unable to walk after contracting polio. He overcame extreme poverty, wrote the influential True Decalogue, and served as a key advisor during the fight for the Philippine independence. Bayani reimagines that story in a unique way. Rio was once a gifted overachiever, but after contracting the polio virus, he withdrew from the world and developed a deep inferiority complex. Hoping to help him move forward, Lulang Sora grants him a mysterious seedling, telling him that if he takes care of it, he will eventually find the answers he's been searching for. Rio is a highly unique summoner and zoner who fights while hovering above the ground. He controls the match by commanding a powerful spirit companion to attack from long range, cover huge portions of the stage, and lock down space. Next we have Tonio, inspired by Antonio Luna, one of the most respected military leaders in Philippine history. Widely regarded as the fiercest Filipino general of the revolution, Luna was famous for his discipline, his brilliant military mind, and, admittedly, his explosive temper. He founded the country's first military academy, was also a scientist, an expert marksman, and a skilled martial artist. Fun fact, at one point he even came close to dueling Jose Rizal. Bayani stays fairly close to that legacy. Tonio is portrayed as Drey's most trusted general, a towering warrior feared by both his enemies and his own allies. Even after Drey's death leaves him shaken and uncertain, Tonio refuses to give up, continuing the fight with the same unwavering determination that made his historical counterpart such a legendary commander. Tonio is a heavy grappler archetype who uses high physicality, aggressive brawling to pressure opponents. He relies on brute force, heavy strikes, and command grabs to inflict massive damage at close range. Next up is Leon, inspired by Emilio Aguinaldo, the first and youngest president of the Philippines. Aguinaldo was one of the leaders of the Philippine Revolution and headed the Magdalo faction of the Katipunan, the organization that fought against Spanish colonial rule. He played a major role in several victories, including the Battle of Imus, where he captured the sword of Spanish general Ernesto de Aguirre. After the Spanish defeat, Aguinaldo declared Philippine independence in 1898 and became the country's first president. However, his legacy remains controversial, especially due to his role in the execution of fellow revolutionary Andrés Bonifacio and his actions during the Philippine-American War. Bayani uses that complexity to create one of its more morally gray characters. Leon believes that war isn't just about fighting for freedom, but about fighting for what he sees as the greater good. Whether someone is a friend or a foe, if they stand in his way, Leon is willing to eliminate them to achieve his vision. Leon is a stance switcher archetype who utilizes a unique mechanical hand that transforms between a gun and a sword. This allows him to seamlessly alternate between zoning and close-range pressure. Next we have Oria, inspired by Gregoria de Jesus, one of the most important women of the Philippine Revolution. Known as the mother of the Philippine Revolution, she was the wife of Andres Bonifacio and a key member of the Katipunan. She helped preserve important revolutionary documents and supported the movement alongside her husband, becoming known as one of its most dedicated figures. Bayani takes that devotion and turns it into a tragic story of love and sacrifice. After Dre's death, Oria becomes desperate to bring him back, refusing to accept that she has lost him. With the help of Lolang Sora, she performs a forbidden alchemy ritual that successfully resurrects Dre, but at the cost of her own sight. Accepting the consequences without hesitation, Oria proves that her love for her husband is stronger than anything else. Oria is a high dexterity rushdown character who wields dual Eskrima sticks to execute rapid combos. She utilizes rapid positioning tools to overwhelm defenses and create dangerous mix-up situations. And last but not least, there is Lolang Sora, inspired by Melchora Aquino, one of the most respected figures of the Philippine Revolution. Known as the Grand Woman of the Revolution and the Mother of Balintawak, Aquino supported the Katipunan by providing food, shelter, and medical care to wounded revolutionaries. She was eventually captured by the Spanish government and exiled to Guam, but is remembered as a symbol of courage and compassion. Bayani gives her a much more fantastical story. After her husband disappears during the war and is declared dead, Sora discovers that the truth behind his disappearance was far more complicated. Accused of treason and exiled to the Southern Pacific, she learns the art of magic and returns seeking revenge, determined to expose the lies hidden from the people. As you can probably imagine, Lolang Sora is a dedicated mage-type zoner archetype who relies on magical projectiles and traps to control space and keep opponents away. And there you have it, from Yasmin becoming Street Fighter's first Filipino character to the historical figures reimagined in Bayani, it's clear that Filipino culture has had a much bigger presence in fighting games than many people realize. Hopefully we'll continue to see even more unique backgrounds and fighting styles represented in the genre. And if you want to keep exploring Filipino fighters, as I mentioned earlier, I have another video featuring characters from the Philippines, including Jose Rizal and Talin. I'll leave a link for that at the end of this one. If you enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like and subscribing for more fighting game content. It really helps the channel a lot. And let me know in the comments which countries, regions or cultures you'd like to see cover next. For now, this has been Cammyplayer, and I'll see you guys later.